published in oh, has been published in Prairie Fire, Carte Blanche, River Teeth, Hippocampus, The Citron Review, and other journals. She's currently working on a memoir in essays exploring the themes of identity, motherhood, and intergenerational connection. She writes during the in-between moments of work and parenting and owns too many notebooks. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me okay? Oh, it's weird to do this when I don't see anyone. Thanks for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here and to share some of my writing. I'm going to read two pieces. Okay, you can hear me. Thanks. So the first one I'm going to read was published last year in River Teeth's Beautiful Things, and it's called Artifacts. My kids leave artifacts, fragments of themselves for me to find. Crumpled cheese stick wrappers shoved between couch cushions, stained unicorn and rainbow t-shirts tossed beside the laundry hamper, sandy socks thrust into my pockets at the park. I gather these clues and arrange them, study them, hints about their days. My littlest starts kindergarten and I excavate creations from her bag, red and green buttons taped together in the shape of a Christmas tree, papers with scribbled hearts and lopsided letters. Her artifacts I can pick up, turn over in my hands. I ask her about them and she squiggles and sways, dancing and bursting to tell me. My older daughter's artifacts are less tangible, more hazy, whispers in the dark before bed, giggles about crushes, questions about puberty, sometimes with tears. Why are my friends mean to me? So quiet I need to lean closer to hear. Even in the dimness, her lips pout, her worry shows. These fragments are more fragile, signals of her sadness and fears, concerns she's still willing to share with me about hardships I'm desperate to shield her from. I know now these pieces of who she is will keep evolving as she gets older, become more elusive. So I listen. I handle these artifacts as little as possible. I gather them gently, observe, draw the fragments to me, wipe away debris. I whisper back to them, hoping not to lose them, hoping they won't ever disappear. Thank you. That's my first piece to read. And the next one I'm going to read is an unpublished piece, but I've written it as part of my collection of essays that I'm working on. And it's called The Week Before. On Saturday, 6 days before, I drop my 7-year-old off at a play date and take my 5-year-old to a birthday party. They sing their excitement in the car, boisterous and loud, shrieking with laughter. Dad calls, asking me to pick up garbage bags and bananas for him on my way home. I ask, how's mom? The usual start of our every conversation. He lowers his voice, and I can barely hear him over the kids trilling, but I don't hush their exuberance. The same, he says, eyes closed, resting. I imagine him sitting beside her bed, turned away to not disturb her. On Sunday, I phone in the morning. Dad reports on mom's coughing fits overnight. Exhausting for them both, mom's lack of strength, dad's helplessness and worry. I phone in the afternoon, and he describes how mom tolerated some food, almost a whole bottle of Ensure. The personal support worker fed her through a dropper because mom can barely open her mouth anymore, a result of the disease. In the evening, when I call, dad's organizing pills in pill boxes for him and mom before bed. Pills she won't be able to ingest. My calls feel so inadequate. On Monday, the personal support worker suspects mom has congestion in her chest. My sister calls long distance from Montana. She moved before we knew mom's diagnosis, before we understood how much would fall on us, before my resentment swelled. She wonders about booking a flight home, when and for how long, and I don't know what to tell her. Hi, Mom, I say when I stop by on my lunch break, her eyes closed, mouth open, chest rising and falling quickly. I stroke her silver hair. The smell of lavender shampoo stays on my hands after I leave, and I don't want it to fade. Before bed, my eldest traces the sparkly eyes of her favorite stuffy. Will Yaya die soon, she asks. I thought I'd hid things better. The phone calls, the time spent at my parents', the tension and sadness in my voice. I think so, I say. My tears well and fall. She buries her face in my shoulder. On Tuesday, my sister calls on my way to the dentist, an appointment I considered canceling. She updates me from dad that mom's heart rate is high, she's dehydrated, and her oxygen levels are low. Dad and the personal support worker put her on oxygen like the palliative care team showed them last week when the tank was delivered. I feel like I'm seeing the world through dirty glass. I make small talk with the hygienist about the unseasonably warm weather and my kids' Halloween costumes. She reads off my chart that she was my hygienist 30 years ago, and we joke that we'll see each other again in another 30. I postpone my afternoon work appointments so I can be there when the nurse arrives for her daily visit. I asked Dad to turn down the Zumba video playing in the background, music Mom tapped her feet to just days ago. The nurse confirms no congestion in Mom's lungs, but also no airflow in the bottom. Today, Mom's not eaten or drunk. I walk the nurse to the front door so I can ask freely and alone how much time she thinks is left. She says with no food or water, sometimes people can last up to 2 weeks. With a hand on my shoulder, she murmurs, and mothers can last longer. That night after dinner, I text a parent friend, hey, Halloween plans next week still on. Bring Eileen about 6. I text my oldest friend from when I was a teenager. I think it's going to be soon with a sad face emoji. He calls right away, stays on the phone with me through the silence. On Wednesday, before meetings, I print off bereavement forms. 3 days of leave doesn't seem enough. Dad calls the cemetery to prepare them. I sit beside Mom, obsess over the numbers on the finger monitor, needing them to tell me something. Heart rate up to 108, oxygen levels dipping, 0 amounts of liquids. How long can this be sustained? My husband puts the kids to bed while I hide in the basement with my laptop for the first session of an online writing class. I keep my camera on, wait my turn to introduce myself, pretend to take notes while I doodle swirling designs that repeat and connect, repeat and connect. After, I kiss my sleeping daughters goodnight and slip out to wait with Dad for another nurse. Someone decided on a morphine drip for Mom in case she was in pain. It feels like I'm watching through a haze as the nurse installs the port in Mom's arm, reviews instructions that I need to write down, shows me how to document the doses. Mom's mostly still, the oxygen machine humming, her chest still rising and falling. I love you, I whisper. I hope she can hear me. I hope I've been a good daughter. On Thursday, I take my kids to school and go into work. I only remember that I canceled my afternoon. My husband picks up my sister from the airport. There's not much more to say than what you've said, she reassures me when I tell her I haven't said enough. Heart rate 120, oxygen consistently in the 80s. Later at home, I hunch over the laundry room sink to scrub green paint off the leg of a white fuzzy bunny costume, berating myself for agreeing to let my youngest play in hers before Halloween. Dresses hang beside me, a batch of clothes I bought in the summer off Facebook. The first one is black, just above knee length, sleeveless with ruffled shoulders. Maybe with a black cardigan, I can get away with it for a funeral. Definitely, I will have to find black clothes for the kids. On Friday morning, when I drop them off at school, I wave and smile at other parents. On autopilot, I see a client for work, my stomach wrenched, saying words but not hearing them. Driving back, stuck in traffic, my sister calls to say, come now. Her voice terse, apologetic, and the world shrinks. Heart rate 140, oxygen 80. I talk to my husband. Can he pick the kids up and take them to swim lessons? What I don't yet know is that tomorrow we will put a deposit on a cherry wood casket, that my youngest will drop to the ground in tears when I tell her I can't take her to a birthday party on the weekend, that on Monday I will argue about the cost and necessity of a flower van when arranging details for the funeral. On Tuesday, when I lose my oldest favorite panda toque while trick-or-treating, I will drop in inconsolable tears myself. But now, in my parents' bedroom, my sister and I huddle on one side of Mom, my dad on the other. I watch us from one end of a long tunnel. For 2 hours, we sit. We love you, we say. The tubes hooked over her ears slacken. We love you. Golden sunlight presses in as the sun sets. We love you. The room darkens. A stillness settles behind her eyes. We'll be okay, I whisper, her chest still rising and falling, her heart still contracting. I cover her cool hands with mine. Go, I tell her, we'll be okay. Even in the stillness, the oxygen machine keeps humming, and the monitor, no longer able to detect anything, keeps flashing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lena. I just kind of want to take a moment to talk about some of the comments in the chat because there were some really nice ones from Mike who said this is such a beautifully touching piece, and Kelly who pulled out a line that also struck me of I love you, I whisper. I hope she can hear me. I hope I've been a good daughter. I remember reading your submission, Lena, and it was just so beautifully intimate and tender, and it was such a pleasure to hear you bring it to life in your own voice. So
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to let me read it.
So our next reader is going to be MJ Malik. MJ Malik grew up on the Canadian side of the US border and is not surprised by the turn of events. Her short fiction has appeared in Agnes and True, Event, the Dalhousie Review, and the New Quarterly, and will appear in the 2025 National Flash Fiction Day anthology in June. In 2024, she won the Gritlit Flash Fiction Contest and placed second in Geist's annual postcard story contest. She is an associate editor at the Thames Review and a fiction reviewer at Doric Literary. And I will drop her website in the chat. Over to you, MJ.
Thanks so much. And thank you again for inviting me here. Lena, I just want to say I remember reading that piece, Artifacts, when it was published, and I just loved it. So it was great to hear you read it. Thank you. I'm going to read a story that was published in the Dalhousie Review in autumn 2023. I'll just read the beginning of it. It's called Intimate Objects. Cassandra follows a slight man in pressed khakis. She thinks he is the ideal museum visitor. Still, she follows at a distance, as she can't stomach approaching with the interview consent form. She's not ready to talk to another human being. Eric slept on the couch last night. She notes with pleasure how the man eagerly bends to read all the placard descriptions she painstakingly wrote, and how he stands aside when a group of school kids rush through, smiling politely at the teacher. When they are gone, he circles back to the oldest farm implements, pulls a notebook from the pocket of the satchel he's wearing on his chest, and sketches. Grad student, she decides. On the second floor, in the section devoted to the history of the Welland Canal, they are suddenly alone. As soon as she sits onto the bar stool in the corner, he walks toward her, stands 2 feet away, and frowns. I'm not going to touch anything. He tips himself forward, unzips his satchel, and shows her a brown paper lunch bag and a tiny umbrella inside. She smiles. Oh no, I'm not security. But you work for the museum. Yes, hello. I'm Dr. Cassandra Borden, her maiden name. I'm an archaeologist for the museum. I catalog and curate the exhibits. I'm Jay, he says. And you are studying me? He looks around the empty room and then straight at her face, his eyebrows lifted. You seem extremely interested in everything, and I'm curious about what brings you to our tiny museum, where I'm doing research, market research, interviewing patrons. She thrusts a consent card at him and blushes, thinking of the girls in Vegas who flick sex to your room postcards at passersby. Damn the budget crisis. Research. I am also a scholar. He sticks the unread card in his sketchbook and zips it back into the satchel. This close, she marvels at the pale, hairless skin on his fingers. No ring. His nails are perfectly trimmed. Their half-moons shine. He smells like a rain-soaked lawn. Might you have time for an interview in my office? It's pretty quiet here during the week. Sure, I have time. May I also request an interview with you for my research? In her office, Jay lifts the pack off his chest, places it between his feet, and signs the release form without reading it. The door is closed, which might have been a mistake, but she'd have to get up and walk around him now to open it. The tightness in her groin is not fear. She opens the interview protocol for marketing. What made you decide to visit our museum today? The objects. She looks up and waits for more, fingers about the keyboard. I mean, I like old things. Museums show me what it is best to look for when I go to garage sales, pawn shops. The pawn shop on Main Street is a disgusting place with yellow cellophane and an iron grill on the window, as though the used buck knives and Kirby vacuums displayed there are precious artifacts and not desperate moltings fit for goodwill. Cass tries to imagine selling museum subscriptions to its customers. While she is typing, Jay asks her, why did you decide to follow me? The museum wants more patrons, and you read every description. You looked at every item. I am looking for something you do not see. What is that? As though to show her, he sweeps his eyes around her office, across her non-flowering orchid, the photo of Walter licking Eric's face, and the metal lockbox labeled specimens for curator sitting on the floor. I look for alternatives. Cass types this in and stops, suddenly annoyed. Alternatives? Like a better way to curate the exhibit? A better way to display things? My turn to ask, he says. How do you decide what to put in the display? It varies. Sometimes it's what's uncommon or what we have the most of. I don't always decide. A donor might stipulate that an item be displayed. He nods. She looks at her notes. What alternatives do you mean, Jay? Alternative means, you might say, secret uses. Do you mean alternative uses for the display items, like secret societies or illegal uses? Personal uses. My question now. Jay sits forward and rests his fingertips on a ceramic mug stuffed with pens. He traces the cursive script that spells out, I can dig it. Eric gave her that mug when they were new. Do you handle the objects? With gloves on, not at all if they're delicate or fragile. She feels like she's on a panel, out of reach, boring him. We had a lace hanky from pre-Confederation that was disintegrating. It's under glass. She breathes. He waits. What do you mean by personal uses? Can you elaborate? Intimate use. Her fingertips tingle as she types his answer. Her eyes drop, but she can't see his lap from her side of the desk. Has she been foolish, lulled by a stereotype of the model Asian student? My turn. Have you ever curated torture devices? Cass straightens up and tightens her butt in the crevice of a chair. We're a family museum in a small town. There are a few military items in the Civil War room, killing swords, thumb screws, stuff the school kids love. Nothing too shocking. But have you held torture devices? She looks at the door and thinks of picking up the phone. His eyes rest on her face softly. She remembers the basement dungeon during her co-op placement overseas. I have, not here. Why are you asking me about handling objects? The question is off script. She's forgotten about the protocol and wonders if he's asking about a fetish. Some men like to caress feet, although Eric doesn't seem to care for them. Because I'm a psychometrist. She stops typing and scrolls to the line about occupation at the front of the file. I hold objects to assess their vibrations, to read the emotional energy recorded within them. A psychometrist? She says, typing. Jay asks another question. Have you ever had nightmares after handling objects? No, I sleep like a baby. She stands and her chair rolls back. She imagines the marketing team snorting about her delivery of a fetish customer segment, and maybe not one the museum wants to attract. You know, I'm sure I have all that we need for our study. Thank you, Jay, for your time. He stands too, and Cass sways back at the unbidden image of him undressed. A hairless chest, sharp white ankles, a circumcised penis. He's not looking at her flushed face. He's looking down at the lockbox that's delivered to her office every Monday with items brought up from the basement. Jay points. May I hold what's in there to show you? He's been polite, and she's been dismissive, rude even. So she thinks this might be a way to atone. It'll be an object they would trust with a student intern, nothing too rare or too dangerous. Sure, but you'll have to wear these gloves. She turns the combination lock and lifts the lid. The box holds 2 metal balls, fishing weights, or ball bearings. She rolls the smaller ball onto one of his covered palms and then the other. Jay sits and closes his fists, but not his eyes. He looks at his hands and seems to forget about her. She thinks of an old-time seance and waits for his eyes to roll back or for him to start chanting. Perhaps the cotton gloves are a barrier. Finally, he stands and rolls the balls gently back into her gloved hands. What are they? She asks. For the sacred space. I felt a love song. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, MJ. Oh, that was so great. I found that story so intriguing. So, like the dialogue lines, like I look for alternatives, trying to figure out what that's going to mean. or having nightmares after handling objects, I thought was really interesting. Um, yeah, that's great. I think about objects a lot and our like relationships to them, so I really enjoyed hearing that. Um, yeah, thank you. Our next reader is Abhimanyu Acharya. Uh, Ab Abhimanyu Acharya is a fiction writer and a playwright. He won the fiction contest at the Eden Mills Writers Festival 2024 and has published his stories in Identity Theory, Out of Print, Hakara, amongst other places. He also received the Majdi Boumatar bursary to develop a new play for multicultural theater space in Waterloo in 2023. He has been serving as the creative writing specialist at King's University College and is a postdoctoral researcher at Western University in London, Ontario.
Hello. Thank you, Emily and Mackenzie, for doing this and such beautiful stories, the first two, Lena and MJ. It's a hard act to follow. The story that I'm going to read today, it's called The Jump. It was long-listed for the Austin Clarke Prize for Literary Excellence by Expuritan. I'll start. The Jump. When Kevin said jump, I was already in the air. Before jumping, I mechanically stretched my black and gray swimsuit to hide my butt cheeks, drew in a lungful of air, and stared at the greenish blue of the water for what seemed like a flicker of a second. Then I jumped, only to realize that I should have waited for Kevin's signal first. Water splashed sideways, paving the way for me. I could feel the chlorine in my nose, my ears, my tongue, the taste of purified water. I had the sudden urge to gulp some of it, but I stopped myself. I knew that in a few minutes I would struggle to breathe. The anticipation of suffocation took me back to when I was 13, when Karthik Anna fingered me while placing his huge dark hands on my mouth, not letting me breathe. Not a word, not a whimper. I wanted to die so badly then. Slowly, as I grew older, the intensity of the desire to die mellowed down along with the intensity of the desire to live. I reached a point where I was okay either way and thought it best if both living and dying could happen without much of my intervention. When Kevin said jump, I was annoyed at myself. I had the chance to get an advantage. I could have covered my butt cheeks, stared at the water, filled the lungs with the air after Kevin said jump. I could have taken in the atmosphere of the pool. It was an ungodly hour in the middle of the night, and the pool was empty except for the two of us. It was open for 24 hours, and yet rarely anyone used it at night. We could hear the slow hum of the HVAC system, which soon became the rhythm of silence. I could have taken it all in, but I foolishly lost an advantage of a few seconds. I needed to be inside the water more than Kevin to secure a win, to even the scores. Kevin was a point ahead. He had won the first time soon after we got married, almost a year ago. We had gone rock climbing in a fitness gym near Richmond Street, some 30 minutes from where we lived. Kevin reached the top 15 seconds earlier than I did. Later, he beat me in cycling and then in weightlifting. I bounced back by beating him in running and in Pilates. And now, here we were, trying out a new sport, testing who could stay underwater for longer. His time was 2 minutes 29 seconds. I just needed to be inside for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. When Kevin said jump, I realized it was not the first time that I jumped early, for jumping early came easily to me. When I practiced jump rope, I always fell because I jumped early before the rope came back full circle. I jumped on the future while the present was still not past. I jumped on things that would be eventually mine while they were still not mine. I jumped to tell Karthik Anna that I was not going to mention the incident even before he warned me not to. I jumped on the idea of marriage before my parents even asked me to. I jumped early because I thought it was the jump that mattered and not when or how you did it. When Kevin said jump, I was thinking how ugly I must look while jumping. I'm not a diver. I jumped into the water like a sack of grains, some 16 feet deep. And when you drop into the water like that, it hits your body like a slap. I felt a tingling sensation in my lower body, the kind I felt every time Kevin spanked me. A pleasure mixed with pain. Kevin was into it, and when he spanked me for the first time in a few months after our marriage, I had jumped early as usual and had said I liked it even before he asked me if I did. It became sort of a ritual after that, a kink, a trick on my part, because sometimes I would not want to have sex. Kevin let go of sex when he was allowed spanking. I need something at least, he said, and I would give him that. I found it likable too because nothing penetrated you, and all you had to do was turn around and not look at the other person's face. That day, I had to look at Kartikanna's face, his pimple covering beard, his lower lip violently tucked under the upper row of his teeth, his ruthless brown eyes, his sweat marked brow. I could have closed my eyes. I could have hit him in the groin. I could have made sounds, if nothing else, and perhaps Geeta auntie would have heard. I did nothing. It has been so many years, and I have done nothing. After Kevin said jump, all 57 kgs of my body came up to the surface with as much force and speed as I had jumped. But I forcefully kept my head down, fearing I might unconsciously inhale air if I was not careful, fearing I might fail again. Above the water was just Kevin, who had seen me fail many times, who was used to them, and loved me nonetheless. It was unusual, the kind of love he showed me, considering ours was an arranged marriage and I had met him only last year for the first time. He was tall, his smile formed a dimple, and he had a certain kindness in his eyes that I found rare. We bonded on our shared love for physical activities, a neat arrangement, the perfect formula for a happy marriage. We did not live with his parents, we both worked, and we did things together. Soon we became lovers. How could we not? I had left my country, my parents, my home to come live with him in Canada. I did everything for Kevin, everything he asked me to. When he said love, I loved. When he said fuck, I fucked. When he said jump, I jumped. I jumped in the water, I jumped on the land. I jumped to please him. We were still growing used to each other's bodies, and he was curious to know how mine was touched over the years by different men, how I felt about it, if I still thought about it. It fueled his passion somehow, knowing about my past encounters, knowing that they still turned me on. They did not, but I pretended that they did for him. I presented imaginary stories with other men as real, wishing with all my heart that the real ones were imaginary, until they almost painfully came together 2 days ago. When Kevin said jump, I was trying not to think of what happened 2 days ago. I was trying not to think of how, when I was telling him about an imaginary scenario, he pushed his fingers between my legs in excitement and placed his other hand on my mouth, suffocating me, thinking I liked it. His strained face, his intoxicated eyes, his ruffled hair, all disappeared for a moment, replaced with a different, yet an all too familiar face, a different set of eyes, violent and predatory and brown. Again, I did nothing to stop him. Kevin mistook my muffled sounds for moans of pleasure until he saw tears and stopped immediately. He gave me water. He asked if I was okay, and I said nothing. He asked if I was upset, and I said nothing. I felt ashamed of myself and bad for him, for disappointing him for the first time since our marriage, for not being able to give him what he wanted me to. I simply said it was bodily pain and nothing else. He said there was nothing to be sorry about when I apologized. When Kevin said jump, my eyes were closed. They remained closed when my body hit the water. My feet were the first to touch the water, my head the last. But I must have tilted somewhere. Water only hits like a slap when you fall flat on it, not when you enter the head first. I survived the initial momentum of the jump and was able to move my body more freely. I left no part of my body outside the water. I tried keeping my eyes closed, but I could not keep them shut for longer. I opened them and wondered how the water in my eyes would interact with the water in the pool. Soon my eyes burned, and I was sure they had turned red. I blinked quickly. I don't know if I was crying or if it was just water. Long after Kevin said jump, my lungs started losing air. I ended up gulping a few mouthfuls of water. Still, I refused to resurface. I stubbornly stayed underwater, letting the water take over me. I remember the exact phrasing when we decided on the game. We were supposed to stay underwater as much as possible, and holding our breath was just an implicit corollary. If I stayed underwater without holding my breath, how does that matter? What if I gulp several mouthfuls and decide never to resurface? I saw a white light flashing against my eyes. I swallowed a few more mouthfuls, this time giving up all the resistance, and that was all I remembered while I was still underwater. When I opened my eyes, I saw Kevin's face loom large over my head. I coughed some water out, or was it vomit? When he asked me if I was okay, I did not answer. Instead, I asked him how I did and if I won. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your recurring motif of using jump, and you did something that I think is very hard to do in fiction, which is to stay rooted in the physical present while exploring the interiority of that character and going back and forth. I still knew, and I had the tension of what was happening in the present moment while exploring these greater intellectual depths, and yes, so it really stood out to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And some great comments in the chat as well. Okay, so our next reader is going to be Erin McNair. Erin McNair lives in North Vancouver, BC, on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Her stories have been published in Conjunctions, The Baffler, The Walrus, Subterranean, and others. She's finished a collection of short stories with the generous support of the Canada Council and is currently the writer-in-residence at North Vancouver Recreation and Culture. And I will also put her website in the chat. Over to you, Erin.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Is that working well? I am going to read something a little bit different today. It's a little shorter and it's from Augur magazine, which I'm definitely going to plug if I have time at the very end because I loved working with them. And this is a short speculative piece called Moth Lake. Tapping at your window under a moon-hid blackened night, beckoning you into the quiet cradle of the forest. The Luna moth's pale green tendrils sway just out of reach, skirting exploded cattails sprung from a fetid ditch. You follow, transfixed, the smear of dancing light, propelling you onward, your bare feet catching on brambles and sticks, body yielding to somnambulous desires. We don't know this part of the story. We only know that you were gone, one of the vanished. Your bed sheets lie crumpled, the duvet thrown hastily to the floor, your window yawning wide as the night air spools into the empty bedroom. Aromas of hickory and sweet gum perfume the corners, the heady scents haunting our thoughts, but just out of memory's reach. Yet their presence as real as the hordes of well-wishers or drama chasers, or just plain unemployed, yelling your name as they thrash at the underbrush, scouring the dappled maple forest, the walnut grove for any clues to your whereabouts. Hello, the voices cry. No one leaves any notes, suicide, ransom, or otherwise. A vanishing occurs sometime between midnight and 6 a.m. from a rickety lakeside dock. It's the perfect night for a naked dip. With a practiced step-step dive, you slide your body under the dark water, its cool caress a thrilling reminder of each millimeter of skin, every pore, hair, and scar slapped into consciousness. As your body temperature cools and you lose the boundaries between what is lake and what is you, there is a soul, it could be a soul, gliding just above the edges of the water. Its wings beat in a rhythmic wave as it aims for the far side of the bank near the tallest trees. You think you can make it if you backstroke most of the way, if you keep the ghostly body within your peripheral vision, only stopping for a moment to touch the flame between your legs, the only part of you which suddenly burns white hot. One of you parked behind the brick washrooms near the athletic field in a brown 1990 GMC Vandura with illegally mirrored rear door windows, abandons a victim. The dim flicker of the plastic outdoor light bounces off your balding pate as you pull free a careworn balaclava. Her struggles against the biting plastic restraints are no longer of any interest. Her pleas banal, as if the months of planning and waiting and plotting in the parking lot of Loblaws are now immaterial. You open the creaking door and breathe deeply, emerging to follow a fluttering male, its twirling body like a fallen slice of moon. A larger lure flares your hair-choked nostrils as you're caught in an invisible riptide of need. There is some new darkness out there, and you need to hold it close or crush it with two hands, or both. We won't know the reason one of you took the GO train from Toronto, transferring via the new Ontario Northwoods bus line to Muskoka, following a pull so intense it obscured all reason, the lure of seductive pheromones tightening at the crotch of your jeans uncomfortably with every bump in the road. We will assume, after we view the clip of the CCTV footage, your eyes moonward, body stumbling in a trance, that you were wasted. It was after the big game and everyone at the bar was drinking and nobody saw you leave. Your wallet later found on the trail leading to Moth Lake. We will simply think you have fled your jobs, your families, your multitudes of responsibilities. Cars will be found abandoned en route after evening runs to get milk jugs, or midnight snacks, or that extra special joint from a friend's friend with the farm off Highway 141. A rowboat or two will drift into the lake's sentinel weeds, oars slack, stuck in the mud. We won't check any lunar calendars as we scour the earth for answers, blind to the obvious moon and winking stars. The reports of those gone missing in the late summer heat will be filed and stamped, and there will be much weeping, the loss unfathomable, for why would you just up and leave everything you've ever known? We assume you've been thrown off course by the relentlessness of the big city, how it never sleeps, how it emits a forever hum and a disorienting light, and a woo-woo of ambulances at all hours, all the time, that woo. We cannot understand your desire, all-consuming, chased with an intense panic that you might die at any moment before experiencing the waking dream, the pair of tremulous feathery antennae beating upon your body, the vibration, a wild frequency, a summons to a beautiful field of cosmos, or to the wettest, most virile fuck you'll ever have the pleasure to participate in. And certainly, we won't know that you will all meet each other in a copse in the middle of the forest, having followed your obedient abductors, lazily beating their wings, task completed. The moon will tear through the clouds as you each step forward. It is a trap, you can see that clearly, but she is the Luna Queen, and the sweet release will be worth everything. Your lover spreads her colossal wings before you, her body a fever.
From Townsend University in 2014 with a BS in English. Erica has worked as a freelance editor and also for CloudMed Solutions, LLC, as a recovery analyst. Her poetry, nonfiction works, and short stories have been published in numerous literary magazines, blogs, and anthologies. One of her recent short story publications, Coffin Bell, won second place in Commuter Lit's Halloween Week 2024 contest. Her upcoming publication, The Servant, will be her debut novel. In her free time, she enjoys making jewelry, researching family history for herself and others, gardening, and spending time with cats.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm going to be reading my short story Domestication which was published in OFIC magazine, and I hope you enjoy it. Domestication. Countless hours were spent readying me for my mission, building, programming, drills, and field experience. And yet nothing prepared me for the sudden loss of said mission. I had never run a simulation to take into account the possibility that in one moment I would have a purpose, taking out the targets assigned to me by my creator. Then in the next second, there would be nothing else to eliminate. It was over. The war was over. My job was over. Was I over? I scanned the area just to confirm. There were shell casings in the grainy dirt. Bodies lay there as well, reddening the ground and making it resemble clay. A vehicle lay on its side, filled with holes. Buildings and houses in the nearby town were similarly ventilated, and little fires bloomed from them. Some had fallen entirely. There was no life left. I walked around the town, hoping I'd see something I had missed. I could find my purpose by viewing this place from a different perspective. It didn't work. The town and my sense of being both remained empty. As if conserving battery, I lowered myself onto my knee joints and rested in the center of the dirt road. I looked up, watching the smoke circling above the buildings I had destroyed. The smoke seemed to be escaping this desolate place, and yet I was still here. I revisited my orders, looking for something I had overlooked. I wasn't told to return to my creator. The instructions ended there. It occurred to me that my creator hadn't cared enough about me to prepare me for my existence after my mission. Perhaps he hadn't thought I would succeed. Closing my visual receptors, I contemplated if my creator wished for me to stop functioning now. I would end my programming and remain here in the husk of the town I had ruined, resting until my carapace crumbled into dust in the dirt. It seemed fitting that I should lie in a place where nothing lived any longer. Something rustled to my right. Before I even opened my visual receptors, I aimed the weapon built into my arm. Then I looked. The rustling was coming from a bush that bordered the sidewalk before a shop, but the bush was too small for a human to be hiding inside. As I watched, I realized that something was watching me back. Two small golden eyes blinked at me. All I had to do was think, and my weapon would fire. Yet, my thoughts did not run along that path. I continued to look at the eyes. As long as there was this life form to point my weapon at, then I continued to have a reason to exist. I became still, and the creature crept out of the dark after a few minutes to sample the air. Feline. It was 99% black, with just a few white hairs speckling its chest. It was inches from my weapon now, appraising me either as friend or foe, having no idea what I was about to do. It was so unlike the humans, who'd known exactly what I was and what I'd been sent to do to them. Why didn't I fire? I knew my mission. I needed my mission. This would complete my mission. It was a logical paradox I wasn't advanced enough to solve. The cat, apparently having decided I was a threat, moved before I could register the motion. It darted away as I fired impotently into the spot where it had been standing, sending shards of sidewalk flying. I scanned the area, but the black cat had vanished into the shadows again. Taking cue from how it relied on another sense to evaluate me, I ignored my visual receptors and focused on auditory inputs instead. Wind chimes tinkled on a nearby porch as a breeze whipped down the street. A television chattered inside a house. A spigot dripped water, pattering drops into a dirt by a garden, and nails ticked as paws tread across the tile floor. I opened my visual receptors and turned to a shop where the door was ajar. The clever cat had run inside the closest structure. I followed it, pushing the door farther as I entered. There were no bodies here, as the humans had run to escape me, leaving these shelves of sustenance that would now rot in their absence. I expected the cat to hide again, but it sat boldly in the open, lapping at a puddle that formed from a dropped milk carton. It paused in the act of drinking to look up at me with gold eyes. Was it afraid of me? Was it curious? I wasn't sure, and I didn't know why I wanted to know. I am AJ-20, I said, the speaker crackling in my chest to relay the greeting. I've been sent by my creator to exterminate all life in this town. Therefore, you cannot live. It stopped drinking from the puddle and sat on its hindquarters to regard me. I almost expected it to speak, but of course it didn't. Did it know I was about to kill it? Did it just not care? Do you accept your fate? I asked, even as I searched for a loophole in my programming to prevent me from pulling the trigger. My creator hadn't specified which species I was meant to eliminate. Surely he meant humans, not cats. Did that mean I was free to choose what I did now? The possibility of being free terrified me. I didn't know how to face that. The possibility of being free terrified me as I envisioned the empty plains of a desolate desert unfolding before me. I didn't know how to face that desert alone without instruction. I wasn't programmed for this. While distracted by inner turmoil, the cat had moved. I didn't notice until I looked down, seeing it rubbing against my legs. It looked up at me, as if waiting for something. I allowed my weapon to recede on my arm. Then I crouched beside the cat and ran metal fingers through its fur. I couldn't feel it, but the visual was pleasing, and the cat seemed to like it too. It started to rumble under my hand. I said to it softly, "My master, the man who made me, has given me no further instructions. I don't think he cares where I am or what I do next. I'm alone." The cat stared at me. It blinked, but made no other response. The rumbling continued companionably. "I can't continue to exist this way. I must serve." My metal fingers tightened slightly, clutching at the cat's fur. As I grasped it, I was holding feebly onto the only possibility I saw for continued existence. I begged, "Allow me to serve you, my new master." The cat blinked again. I took this as assent. As I continued to pet it, actually, the cat was a male. He raised one of his paws. I thought he meant to attack me. I froze, but he just batted at the wires that hung from my damaged arm like veins. If I could have smiled, I would have. The rain that evening put out the last of the fires that smoldered following the destruction. Over time, vines wrapped around fences, climbed up buildings that remained. Grass grew around the debris, then grew tassels, on which my master loved to pounce. Also, small animals hid in the brush, mice, voles, rats, and moles. I was still an agent of destruction, but on a much smaller scale these days. The bullets that remained in my weapons were much too large, so my hands darted quickly into the grass, crushing tiny animals swiftly. Then I carried them back home to my master. Or rather, homes. My master had several homes he frequented. There was a chill in the air, according to my temperature gauge, so I found him as I expected, inside the house with a large fireplace. Earlier today, I'd added wood to keep the fire blazing. My master looked up from his cushioned bed to see what I'd brought him. Toys I made for him lay discarded on the floor, and perhaps we would play with those later. I knelt and placed the small body of a mouse beside his bed, its face twisted with a bloody snarl. Ignoring the mouse, my master stood with a big stretch that arched his back, then put a paw on my thigh. Knowing what he wanted, I picked him up and held him in the crook of my arm. Gently, I rubbed a metal finger along his jaw as he rumbled and started to drift off to sleep. My new master had not created me, as my original one had, and yet he created every day for me by giving me a purpose. Sometimes a simple existence could be the best kind. Softly, as not to wake him, I said, "Thank you, master." Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, that's so fun. I loved the imagery in the story, especially the cat batting at the veins hanging down. I thought that was great. And when the cat starts being referred to as my master, um, love that the crux of this character's freedom and agency is coming across a cat. That's very fun. Okay, great. Thank you to all of our readers and to our audience for joining us tonight. Our next event will be online on May 12th, so please follow our social media or check our website for more information. If all of our readers could turn their cameras on for one last round of applause for all of the exceptional readings that we got to hear tonight. And since the audience is silent, it's just, I think, in the chat or people this a silent round of applause. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. That was amazing. And yeah. All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.